Hello, everybody. Today I'm here with Sandy Gennaro. Sandy, it's so good to see you again.
Good to see you too, Scott. It's been a while.
It's been a while, but I got to tell you, from a guy who's done a variety of things with you, saw you at the main Vistage conference. You came to my group and spoke there, and now I've read your book. It's fun to be interacting with you and learning so much about how you've worked music and business together.
hmm Well, music is a business, and I am the product or service. It's a one man business, but it should be run like any other business, actually.
Yeah, it should be. And I think it's so cool based on the work that you've done with so many great artists. And I think we ought to highlight some of the artists that you've worked with and how you've been able to turn that work into teaching people about business and your book as well. But let's start with some of the great artists that you've worked with.
Okay, well, I was in my first band was a band called Blackjack, and the lead singer in that band was before he was known as Michael Bolton. It was he was known as Michael Belotin, and that was kind of like an all-star band in reverse because that was all of our first really big project, but we all went on to do bigger things in the music business. So that started the career. That was my first pro project signed to a pro label. And then after that became the Pat Travers Band. And then that was about 2 years, 81 to 83. And then after that, the end of 83 became Cyndi Lauper. And that was 83, the end of 83 till like the beginning of 85. And then there was Kraft. That was the tour I did opening for Queen. I did their record and the subsequent tour. And that was the summer of 86. And then the first tour with the Monkees came. That was in the summer of 87. And intermittently, I worked with the Monkees from 87 until Davy Jones passed away in 2012, intermittently. And I did, that was 87, 88, the Monkees. And then 89 came Joan Jett and the Blackhearts. And I was with her from actually the end of 88 until the beginning of 90. And then after that became Johnny Winter. That was 92 to like 95, something like that. But then the Monkees, I went back with the Monkees and all of that. And then in the middle of 2000, in the middle of the 2000s, like somewhere around 2004, I joined Bo Diddley's band. And I was with Bo Diddley and trying to juggle Bo Diddley and the Monkees and Davy's gig and Mickey Dolenz' solo gigs. And finally, when Davy Jones passed away in 2012, I left the Monkees for good. And Bo Diddley passed away in 2007. So then in 2010, I went back with the Pat Travers Band, and I was with them from 2010 to 2015. And then 2016, I started getting into speaking. And I think my last gig with the Travers Band was at, I think, the January of 17, I think. And then I got into speaking, and then the pandemic happened. And then during the pandemic is when I wrote my book. And that's it. That's where we sit. That's where we sit right to this
That's
moment.
it. That's all, Sandy. Nothing
That's
more.
all. That's all.
That is such a great resume. I absolutely love it. But today I do want to talk about the business and you've done in your book and in your speeches, you've done a great job of weaving what you've learned in the music industry and applying it to business. So can you spend a little bit of time talking about some of the things that you've learned and how people can apply it in business?
Well, on a technical level, Scott, I learned that you must read all contracts before you sign them. And in a perfect world, you would have some legal representation. So that's something I learned, which is, somebody in business should always do. But you know, that was the fault of a lot of artists in the 50s, where they were blind and signed contracts without reading them because they were poor, and you know, and whatever they with the enticement of a salary, they went ahead and signed contracts they weren't didn't read. But that was the first thing I learned. But basically, in my presentation, as you know, the principles that I've lived by are surrounded by an acronym called BEATS, and it stands for belief, enthusiasm, attitude, tenacity, and service to others. So how my music business career, basically it was living those principles day in and day out. And I found a guy named Mike Pierce, a Vistage speaker named Mike Pierce, enlightened that fact to me, is that the reason why I became successful is that I pay attention to the little guy, and I want to make people happy. And when people do something for me, I show my appreciation, whether it's my roadie or I engage people every opportunity I have to put a smile on their face, much like the smile you have on your face right now, Scott. So that's basically, you know, and how it applies to business is that leaders need to feel that, you know, need to express their appreciation to the people that work for them, whether it's their family or whether it's their executive team underneath them, or if they're part of the executive team, their subsequent teams underneath them, so to speak. And it's a trickle down thing. So the bottom line is, when you treat your people right and you make your people feel that they're appreciated and that their work in the company is valued, then their job gets better. What their assignment is in their work gets better, because they feel that they're appreciated. They feel that they're trusted. They feel like their opinions matter, and that makes people want to work harder. And I know how I feel. I work for 5 Hall of Famers, and each one across the board, they have that in common. They make their people, their bands, feel like they're part of the success of the show. And you, as a leader, you make your people feel that that they're part of the success of the company, and you know, their opinions matter. And when they don't do something according to your plan or according to the way you want it, there's a way of getting the successful outcome without reprimanding them. You come to a successful outcome by working together. And even though you have an idea of what the successful outcome should be and what the method should be, different than what they're doing at the moment, you try to come to that solution together by asking questions and navigating. You know, you're getting warmer, that kind of thing. And then the employee feels that they came up with the solution, as opposed to you dictating what the solution is as a leader.
I remember reading that in your book about how there was a drum passage that you thought should go one way, and you know, through some encouragement, the guy that was running the band had you play slightly different, and came out just like you said, as if you came up with it yourself. It was, well,
that was the person you're speaking about is a Hall of Fame producer, Tom Dowd.
Yes.
DOWD, and he's the one that produced that first band, Blackjack, with the one that had Michael Bolton as a singer. And yeah, he was exactly that. Where basically the term I like to use is that leaders inspire performance, where bosses insist on the performance. They demand performance. Was the big difference. And even though Tom Dowd had an idea of what he wanted the drum beat to be in a certain song, he kind of guided me through, hey, Sandy, that's not quite the thing. First of all, he always started with a compliment. He said, Sandy, your drums sound great, blah, blah, blah. I love the way you hit them with authority, blah, blah, blah. And then he always followed it up with a question. Hey, Sandy, why did you play that drum fill right there 4 beats long? And I said, I thought it was a good drum fill, Tom. And he said, I thought it was excellent, but I asked you why you played 4 beats long. And I didn't have an answer. He said, you know what, Sandy, that drum fill is perfect for your solo. And it's perfect for your clinics, when you give drum clinics. but it doesn't fit the song. And if it doesn't fit the song, it's not worth the time it takes to play it. All that's needed is a little one beat fill to introduce the chorus. So that was his MO basically. You know, another example of Tom Dowd's MO leader. He's to me a what we call a ambidextrous leader, where he knows when to step in if he sees the tree growing crooked. He knows when to put the brace on it, or he also knows when to let the musician or the artist come up with the solution himself without dictating what the solution is. And it was a guitar player, Bruce Kulick, who now plays with Grand Funk Railroad. He played with Kiss for 10 years. He was the guitar player in the band. And there was an intro to be put on a song and as an overdub. And I was in the control room just as a fly on the wall. And I heard Tom Dowd mention the guitar part to the engineer and out of earshot of Bruce, because he was in the studio tuning his guitar. And, oh, yeah, I hear bonk-a-dink-a-dang-dang-dang. And then instead of dictating to Bruce, hey, Bruce, play this as an intro, he said, we need an intro. Come up with an intro. What do you think should be the intro? And Bruce, a series of, mistakes, and Tom Dowd, oh, that's good, but do something different at the end, or whatever. It became like you're getting warmer. And then when Bruce came to where Tom Dowd wanted, the original thought on Tom Dowd he said to Bruce, awesome, Bruce, you came up with a great intro. So Bruce is there like thinking he's Mr. Artistic, came up with so that's the way Tom Dowd worked. And that's the way basically every leader should work when they can, because that invokes performance from your people. Mm-hmm. And when you have performance from your people, the product or service that your company provides gets better. And in turn, the clients get better. The vendors are happier. The clients are happier. Your customers are happier, and your business grows. So you don't do it for what you're going to get out of it. You do it because it feels good and it makes the person feel good. I could speak all day about this guy, as you probably surmised at the moment.
One of the things that I really enjoyed in your book is you've gone through some adversity, right? It wasn't all just easy for you. You had some setbacks, but yet you learned through the setbacks and were able to overcome. Maybe you can share one or two of those stories.
Well, as far as the biggest setback I had was I moved to LA in the mid 70s from New York City to get my first big break in the music business. And after 3 years of really nothing happening in LA, I was very disoriented, not disoriented, but kind of unhappy about the way things were going. But I finally got an audition with Rod Stewart, and the audition was held in a studio where all the instruments were provided. But when it was my turn to play, I brought in my own drum set. I made all the band wait. I made Rod Stewart wait, where there was drums provided. Sandy, you don't need your own drums. There's drums there ready. The band's ready for you. Oh no, I was so insecure about playing on a strange drum set for the first time in my life. I went to the car and unloaded this big, huge double bass drum set. And it took me about 30 minutes to set it up. And Rod said, man, those drums better sound good. So I didn't get that audition. I was very, very disappointed, and as depressed as I ever was. Things weren't going well in my personal life. My original relationship was going down the tubes. 3,000 miles away from home. I hardly had, 4 figures in the bank for rent or whatever. And I could have, the negative, the enemy was starting to talk to me and starting to kind of infiltrate my positive attitude. Hey, why don't you go home, you loser? You just blew the biggest audition. You're never going to get another audition like that. You came out here to get your first big break. Why don't you go home? And I slayed the dragon. Yeah, I was put myself in a pity party for about 3 days. But then I said, listen, I'm 27, 28 years old at the time. I said, the sun's going to come up tomorrow. I got to I can't, thinking about quitting the business at that point, I thought about what the alternative is. What are you going to do with you're going to live. So what are you going to do with the rest of your life? This is your dream. So you might as well just keep going. Good wolf, bad wolf. inside of all of us. You know the story. They bark, enemy, positive, negative, and it depends on what wolf you feed. And I also heard the bad wolf makes the most noise when he's about to leave your house.
Mm.
So I said, frig this. I used a 4-letter word, F this. I got on the phone with some rehearsal studios in LA and I said, listen, I need to rent an hour on your drum set or whatever. So I booked some time, just myself, me and my Walkman with my headphones playing along with songs that I really like on a strange drum set. So I slayed that dragon.
Mm-hmm.
And I moved on from there. And then because of another series of events, including Carmine Appice of Vanilla Fudge, and I was a big fan. I became friends with him in L.A. We conversed. I told him about the Rod Stewart audition, and I told him, hey, make Carmine, and he's already a superstar drummer, and I'm an unknown little guy. And I gave him Rod Stewart's management's number, and he goes down and gets the gig.
Huh.
And it was the biggest gig of his life. He co-wrote the "I Think I'm Sexy." He did 8 albums with Rod Stewart, several world tours. And at the beginning of my book, he wrote a little testimonial saying, Carmine did, hey, you turned me on to the biggest gig of your life. So it goes back to the lesson that I've learned early on, no matter who you're talking to, and no matter what status they are in the music business or in any business in life, they might have a Superman outfit underneath them. They might be your hero. They might give you advice that could change your life. So engage with everybody, no matter what their label is or position in life is, whether they're checking groceries at Kroger or at your supermarket, at Ralph's or wherever, or you're giving somebody life-changing advice. Everybody matters. Everybody matters. And Carmine, in return, it gave me some advice about sending resumes out or whatever. And it's a longer story, but because of the advice that Carmine gave me, it led to that band Blackjack.
I love it. I love it.
So it was kind of a reverse kind of thing.
So I've got one more question, and then we'll have to wind things up. You've worked with a lot of artists, and in your book, you talk about the business side of the business and what those artists taught you about business. Can you pick one of the artists you worked with that gave you some great business advice, or you saw them doing something good in the business of music that you've been able to take with you and replicate for others?
Well, one thing was working with Joan Jett and the Blackhearts. She, regardless of her public persona, and Cyndi to a certain extent, Cyndi Lauper too, regardless of her public persona and her image, they're very, very intellectual and very, very smart business-wise. Joan used to come on the bus every morning with the Wall Street Journal business section under her arm, invested her money early on. And I would overhear a conversation between her and a manager about investing and how much they would be making and how much to pay the band or whatever. And so that taught me something early on, which a lot of musicians don't get, is that, when you get an advance or when you get money from a royalty or something, you might want to put some away because that royalty is not a bottomless pit. That's going to there's a finite end to that royalty. So you want to be able to invest money. That was one thing that I learned early on with Joan Jett. And then again, working with 5 Hall of Famers, what's the one thing or several things or a few things that they have in common is the fact that they can treat their people well and they pay their people well and they make their people feel appreciated and introduced on every TV show, first and last name. They're introducing us and whatever, traveling in the same mode of transportation, where some artists travel in, the coach or the plane, and the rest of the band is in the van, or the artist stays in the Four Seasons and the rest of the band is in the Days Inn or whatever. But the Hall of Famers, the successful artists, always treated their band and traveled with the band. Davy Jones was on the band tour bus. He could have had his own bus like the rest of the Monkees, but he wanted to travel with the band. He was like a working man's artist, Davy Jones, and became a close personal friend, and stayed at my house in Staten Island, and helped me build my stone wall on the side of my house where I was it was a project of mine. So Davey is a regular person. You know, the one lesson I learned from superstars that I've worked with is that they're regular people,
Hmm.
and they pay attention to the fans' wants and needs because they realize that the fans, their customers, are what put bread and butter on their table.
Yeah,
So there's always a line down the block or outside the bus, and Cyndi would stand there and sign every single autograph. And so Jones, so like Bo Diddley, so like Davey and the Monkees. So there's a common thread through Hall of Famers that you take care of your people.
I love it. That's a great business approach. If you're taking care of your people, they'll take care of the business on your behalf. So that's great. So Sandy, we got to wind down here, but people are going to want to know more about you. How do they get you to speak at their event? How can they get your book? Give us how do they get a hold of you and connect with you?
Okay, my website is sandygennaro.com and spelled Genn like Nancy Aro. My email is sandy@sandygennaro.com, so you can contact me there. Um, I speak for Vistage now since Chair World. I've been doing several Vistage summits, which have groups of 200, 300 members and chairs. But also that's panned out into doing associations and conferences, which I really, really like to do an hour, hour and a half with a live. It includes a live drumming. I bring in a live drum set and play along with some songs, audience participation. It's a lot of fun. My book, if you can always go on Amazon and get my a Kindle version of my book or a hard copy of my book, and you can also go to my website if you want a signed copy, and I'll personalize the copy and send it to you from here. So that's it. Contact me if you have any questions, or if you have musician friends that want a sounding board. I'm always willing to help. I still do some teaching here. As you can see, this is my office here.
Now that looks like a fun office, Sandy.
It's a great office. That's where I work. That's where I work when I'm not on stage speaking to people. So I'm very thankful. And basically, how I got into speaking was throwing a drumstick to a handicapped person in 2016. And the rest of it, if you want to hear the rest of that interesting story, where I had no idea what I was going to be doing when I retired from the road, and now I have a new career because I wanted to put a smile on the face of a handicapped woman in an audience in San Diego, 20,000 people, but I wanted her to have the drumstick. Her husband was a speaker. One thing led to the next. He heard my Cyndi Lauper story. He heard whatever, and that's how I became a speaker.
Well, we didn't have enough time to go into the service section of your acronym for BEATS, but you do a great job of that in the book and speaking as well. So hopefully that's a tease for people to explore more about Sandy. And Sandy, I want to thank you again. It was great seeing you for the third time. And one of the things I'm always going to be touched by is the fact that you were able to come speak at my group. And when you played the clips of all the famous songs that you've been involved in, I got to tell you, my adrenaline was pumping, and everybody else in the room, their adrenaline was pumping too. So thanks again, Sandy, and I appreciate your time.
I appreciate you too, Scott. Thank you so much for this opportunity. It's great to see that smiling face. There's never, when you walk in a room with that smiling face, it's never dark. You always, no matter what the lighting is, it's going to brighten up that room. It's awesome. Anything I can do to help you, Scott, in the future, you let me know.
Thanks, Sandy.
You're welcome.